Good evening, friends. Welcome. This is Dr. Jim Daly of Astronomy for Change. This is a quick follow-up video from yesterday. We talked about things such as Saturn, Jupiter, Antares, and a few specific objects in the sky for the season. I went outside yesterday evening and I saw the sunset was absolutely one of the most beautiful I've seen in a very long time. And I wanted to follow the sky around towards the east, and sure enough, there was the moon rising just before the sun was setting. Now, technically, the full moon, which is tonight, July 16th, rises when the sun sets. It's exactly 180 degrees apart. And I figured this was a good segue into something I've been meaning to talk to you about since the eclipse 2 weeks ago. Tonight, the moon is full. We have a partial lunar eclipse, which is not visible at all from North America at any point. It's briefly visible in parts of South America, Latin America, who witnessed the eclipse 2 weeks ago. Tonight, July 16th, is exactly 2 weeks since the eclipse that we saw. And I wanted to just bring this to you, talk about the moon, and kind of merge that into a larger discussion for the season. Last month, June, we had a full moon. Every month has a full moon. For the June moon, the full moon, we call that the strawberry moon because the strawberries are picked around that time. A lot of these names for the full moon go back to Indian lore or indigenous for this continent, the lore of the people. They would assign certain parts of the season to the moon. For example, in the fall we have the harvest moon, when the moon's light extended the harvest. Well, last month, June, was the strawberry moon. The July moon, which is the moon tonight, is the full buck moon, where the antlers on the deers, the bucks, become strong and they develop to their fullest. So the Indians mark these periods of the month or the various moons for a specific month according to certain things they would observe in nature. And I thought that was an interesting lesson in light of the eclipse we saw 2 weeks ago. Okay, so this moon we see here is the moon last night. Tonight it's full. Let's take a look. Let's zoom in on the moon right now. As you can see, it's not quite full. It's about 98% full. And here in Stellarium, you can see it's not 100% full. Okay, so this is the moon last night. Now let's go back, take a look at the moon for tonight. Okay, notice the change. Okay, the moon is much lower in the east. It's much further away along the ecliptic. Okay, let's take a look. See, it's completely full, right here. So tonight's the full moon, exactly 2 weeks from the eclipse we saw. Now, keep in mind, I mentioned a few minutes ago that as a full moon rises, the sun sets, and conversely, as the sun rises, a full moon would set. So it's 180 degrees apart. For the eclipse 2 weeks ago, that was in the new moon phase, which is exactly 2 weeks from the full moon. So the upshot of that is that the new moon sets with the sun. And the question often comes up, so why don't we have a full solar eclipse every month? It's because the moon is not perfectly, the moon's orbit is not perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane. It's actually 5 degrees from the ecliptic plane. Okay, so that's the answer to that. So what I'd like to do also, friends, is I've been mentioning the ecliptic. like to just share that with you for a moment here. Now this is the path, the imaginary path that the sun and all the objects in our solar system appear to travel along as they, as they orbit the sun. Okay, now if we follow this ecliptic, the red line, that'll bring us to where the sun had set a few hours ago. Right now, this is the sky at around 9:30 tonight. Okay, so we take a look at the constellations along that path. And these are the constellations of the Zodiac. Here we have Sagittarius, we have Scorpio, Virgo, Libra, all the familiar constellations everybody's heard of and has assigned. Now, why do you call yourself a Leo or a Virgo? It's because the sun happened to be in that constellation on the day you were born. So that's where you get your birth sign. Okay, so that's the path of the ecliptic. Okay, so that's the ecliptic, and this is our sky tonight. We have the full moon. It's to the east of Saturn with Antares, Scorpio on the meridian, flanked just slightly to the northeast, of Antares. Now what I want to do is move the atmosphere. We can see all this is set against this amazing galactic center, 25,000 light years distant. Speaking of distances, take a look at Antares and take a look at Arcturus. This is an interesting object lesson in the power of stars, the luminosity of the output of stars. Stark contrast to what we're used to thinking about. Antares and Arcturus are comparable in brightness. See, one is a red supergiant, one is a red giant star. Arcturus is much closer than Antares. Arcturus is a mere 40 light years. Antares is almost 600 light years away. So its light's been traveling 600 years to get here. They left in the year 1419. And the light we see tonight from Antares left then is just arriving tonight. Whereas if you're 40 years old or so, the light we see tonight left Arcturus on the day you were born. So, okay, so why the difference? Why the same brightness? These two stars, Antares and Arcturus, why are they the same brightness, but they're widely separated in distance? 600 to 40. That's 250 times further away. Excuse me, 25 times further away. So why are they similar in brightness? That speaks to the luminosity. If we take a look at these stars again, here, look at the size of Antares now. Look at the size of Arcturus. This one is only 40 light years. This one is 600. Then you look at the enormous size. Remember, too, that the luminosity or the power output of the star varies as the size to the second power and the temperature to the fourth power of the temperature. The two stars have very similar temperatures, so most of the luminosity difference then is because of the size. Now, the size of Antares, Arcturus will never be the size of Antares because the initial mass of these two stars is widely different. Antares is a high-mass star who will end its life in a spectacular fashion as a Type II supernova very soon. It's in the latter stages of its evolutionary cycle and will end soon in a spectacular display as a brilliant new star, supernova. Probably, I mean, at this point it's hard to tell. There's no really external signs. We can look at the star and kind of predict when that will happen. Aside from the modeling on the surface, on the upper layers of the star's atmosphere and the photosphere, these changes in brightness, this modeling, the bright and dark patches are indicative of internal changes. That's one indicator. Beyond that, there really isn't. So we just have to sit by and watch as when this will happen, and it will happen. If it's already happened, we won't know because the light takes 600 years to get here. So if it happens in 1419, we'll be only finding out tonight. So Arcturus is very similar to the Sun. Its mass is more or less the same as the Sun. So its end state will be more or less the same as the Sun. Now we're looking at the sun when we look at Arcturus for another 2.5 years, a billion years hence. So that's the story with these two stars, Arcturus and Antares. They make a good object lesson in stellar luminosities, good lesson in stellar evolution. While I'm thinking of it, I'd also like to point out that this week, the week of the 16th through the 21st, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the landing of the moon by the Apollo 11 astronauts. July 16th, which was today, the Saturn V lifted off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and it took 5 days to land on the moon. And Michael Collins is the only surviving member of that team, and he spoke recently at NASA about his role as command module pilot of the Apollo 11 mission. The command module, if you recall, was orbiting the moon by himself, solo, while the two other astronauts, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, were doing their work and their tasks on the lunar surface. So we celebrate that mission this week as the 50th anniversary. Okay. Now, we spoke briefly yesterday about a little catchy phrase, how to find star Arcturus. And as a segue to the northern part of the sky, let's take a look at Ursa Major and the Big Dipper right over here. Okay, it's the Great Bear. The Big Dipper is what we call an asterism. It's a familiar grouping of stars that, when put together, our mind creates these objects, these recognizable objects. In this case, we have a large dipper. All right. The phraseology goes like this. You arc to Arcturus, right, along the dipper, and then you speed to Spica, which isn't Virgo. And Virgo is approaching the western horizon. It should be set somewhere around 11 p.m. Okay, this is about 9:30 now. I also want to mention too that while looking here towards the south, we see the moon. We witnessed 2 weeks ago a total eclipse of the sun. If you were in South America, you got this very rare opportunity to witness one of the most spectacular events in all of nature. Well, there's a lesser event, a lesser eclipse associated with the moon. It's called the Lunar Eclipse, where the moon passes into the Earth's shadow. And that only happens during full moon phase. And in parts of South America tonight, they're going to be able to witness a lunar eclipse where the moon passes through the Earth's shadow. It almost disappears and reemerges on the other side. It's not an eclipse in the sense that it's covered. It's just an eclipse in the sense that you don't see it. The light from the sun is not shining on the moon. You see the moon as reflected light of the sun. Okay, so we won't see that at all here in North America. That's only briefly visible for our friends in South America. Okay. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video, everybody, as much as we've enjoyed producing it here at Astronomy for Change. Our public website is astronomyforchange.org. And we're probably going to be producing these videos at least once or twice a week. This is kind of a special update because there's a number of things happening all at the same time. This week we had a lunar eclipse. We have a total solar eclipse 2 weeks ago and so forth. And so that's what we want to do here at Astronomy Change. We want to keep everybody up to date and abreast of what's going on currently. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please do share. Tell your friends. That membership is free. Simply click on the red tab on the public website and join. Membership is free. Thank you, everybody, and don't forget.